Your community, your opinions, your forum. This is your talk show on WCLO. Opinions expressed on your talk show are those of the host, guests, and callers and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of WCLO or Big Radio staff, management, or sponsors. The open phone and text line number is 608-752-4000. Now, here's the host of your talk show, Tim Bremmel.
It is a Friday morning. Good morning to you all. Welcome. You know, oftentimes when we have guests on the program, we go to the guy who sings names, is what I call him. He's on the internet. He sings like a million names. Tom, I'll bet you there is not a Yuri in his complement of names.
I actually checked.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, there is not.
There is not. Sorry, Yuri. You don't get your own name theme song coming in, but we are glad to have you on the Minutemen Press guest line. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Yuri Rashkin. Good morning.
Good morning, Tim. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I struggle in souvenir and gift shops with that all the time.
I'm sure you do. Well, it's, you know, it would be rare that people haven't heard the name around here. You do a lot of things. You're certainly multi-talented. You were involved in the startup of WADR radio. You play music at various locations. You are an instructor. You have a podcast. And I'm probably missing a half a dozen things that you're regularly involved in. So you're out there, and I think that's great. And people then get to know you a little bit more than that scary guy from Russia, because we have this aversion to Russia, I think, in this country, and that it's not all bad. You and your family left Russia for obvious reasons as well, but that gives you an awfully unique perspective to weigh in on what's going on over there now. You, as I understand it, you and your family left about the time the Soviet Union was falling apart.
That is correct. My family, we actually came to the United States in 1988 as refugees because we were Soviet Jews. And even though we were never religious, it didn't matter because in Soviet Union, it's about ethnicity. And so my family was kind of on the lower end of the totem pole because we were Jewish, because my parents both, genetically tested Jews. And so my parents left as soon as they could, and they never were, really fooled by all the perestroika and glasnost stuff. And that's was kind of, I was hoping for that things were going to get better, but maybe in Russia things just come back, to the circle as they always have been. It's really depressing.
Now, and you and I have talked about this. If memory serves, you were about 11 when your family left
13.
Russia?
13. And
13.
That apparently is I had, one of the things I do that, we can't mention everything because there's only so much time, but I'm a court interpreter. And I managed to leave, and that I didn't know this, but being 10 to 15 years of age seems to be the best time for people to move to another country where they maintain both languages, learn both languages, because I only speak English and Russian. I don't even speak Ukrainian. So, I'm kind of limited. But because I lived in the United States for over 30 years, I have a pretty decent English as well.
Well, this gives you, I think, as someone, so I'm now translating this into my grade school career here, and if I was 11, I was about in fifth grade, fourth or fifth, something in
I was 13, so seventh or eighth.
I'm sorry, 13, yeah. So seventh or eighth grade. So certainly a time when you're now, consciously aware of things going on, and you pay attention once in a while to the news. Your parents talk to you about things, and so in this time when you left the Soviet Union and other countries were breaking, we're working on, breaking this all up into the countries that exist today, was there a distinct fear from your parents' side that said, if we stay here, we could meet our demise?
I think it wasn't so much about the specific demise because my parents were well-educated, active in theater community in Moscow, teaching in colleges, working. So they were themselves doing kind of okay. But first of all, there was absolutely a glass ceiling that they could not break through. My mother was not able to graduate from Moscow Conservatory as a piano major because she was Jewish. So she was able to graduate as a music theoretician, which was more allowed for Jews to attend versus being stars as pianists. So it's a more of a systemic situation. That has been the reason for, I think, my parents always wanting to get out of there. And again, over time, we just see that patterns reemerge.
So here we are today, Yuri, and you, I'm sure, have been paying great attention to this for months. As really, there's been a little saber rattling over there for quite some time now. You go back, I guess, as far as the Crimea annexation, and how do you see this? Is this, I mean, we've heard pundits who have basically no experience with this on all kinds of shows talking about how they think this and that and the other thing. Is this, in your mind's eye, having lived through the demise of the USSR, a Putin, I'm going to regather the Soviet Union as best I can and be the hero forever? Or is this a guy who, what do you think the motivations are, as best you know of the history around there? And do you think it stops at Ukraine?
A lot of good questions, Tim. A lot of good questions. I think with Putin's situation is pretty straightforward. He basically wants to stay in power. That is his goal. That is everything that drives him. That is the reason for his hatred for Ukraine, his hatred for democracy. Because democracy means power changes from time to time, and that's not what Putin is all about. So to him, anything that can lead to regime change in sort of a democratic way, not puppet government, is foreign to him. And the other thing is the Cold War. I was answering questions from my students because, gosh, they have questions, and I can't ignore it. They're saying, well, there was Cold War. Did that end? What happened? And I say, you know what? I don't recall anybody signing a declaration of Cold War. I don't remember signing a peace treaty, anybody doing this. I mean, we know, I think First and Second World War peace treaties were signed with Parker Pence, as I recall.
Yep.
But there was no declaration of peace with Russia over Cold War. it was like almost a media invention that it existed, and it was like a media invention that it stopped being. But for people in Russia, for people that, like Vladimir Putin, were raised in 1970s KGB system, this is just a continuation of the same kind of a situation in the world where you have Russia or Soviet Union, whatever you call it, and maybe in 1950, not maybe, in 1956, Soviet Union invaded Hungary, brought troops in there because they were thinking of moving towards the West. And then in 1968, they brought troops into Czechoslovakia, into Prague, to stop that country from moving to the West. So they have a history of sending troops and stopping people's will from being realized. And now they're doing this in Ukraine, and it's just amazing to me to watch the heroism of the Ukrainian people, because, I think, I have different perspectives. What I bring to this is I have kind of an American perspective, but I also have a Russian perspective. And I think I have a fairly decent, at this point, Ukrainian perspective, which I like to kind of share with people because they're very different. What seems like a reasonable thing to us isn't reasonable over there. And right now, in Putin's propaganda machine is absolutely on fire. There is thrill. Things are going great. Why stop at Ukraine? Let's keep on marching. There's Moldova. There's other countries, first of all, that didn't manage to join NATO to protect themselves against Russia. So those countries are prime targets. And then we'll see what happens. The problem with Putin is he's been absolutely unchecked for over 20 years. He doesn't even really mind using nuclear weapons. We're dealing with a guy who absolutely totally lost it and thinks that he can get away with anything, and that he thinks that his life's been nothing but a string of victories.
Yeah, I guess I can see that from his perspective. However, is he blissfully ignorant, do you think, Yuri? Or is part of what I view as sort of the worldwide, the global erosion of the popularity of communism and socialism and that, partly driving this? Because now we are seeing, and I'm sure he's quite well aware of, the Ukrainians putting up a fight, which I'm not sure he expected them to do, and B, people in Russia itself now protesting, some brave people in my opinion. But this is not like it used to be, where when a Russian leader said, this is what we're doing, everybody's on board.
It really is. It really is. The change that happened is there's no more really ideology of communism and socialism. They junked that about 30 years ago. And now it's just basically a mafia state. But there's absolutely no interest or influence of what people are going to do. So you're right. There have been now finally some protests, but really, first of all, they absolutely have no influence on Putin whatsoever. And second of all, I think really from that perspective, they're being done to like salvage people's souls because they're sitting at home and they feel totally powerless because their dictator does whatever they want, whatever he wants, and he is going after a neighboring country that they have cultural, historical relations with. This is their like brothers and sisters, and this is what is being done because of will of one person who feels that he's just tired of waiting until Ukraine like officially collapses into his arms, and he's going to come in and force himself on it. And so these people, because they've been bad-mouthed by others, Russian people, for their complete lack of standing up for their rights and their whatever at this point. So they came out and they protested. That's great. That's important because their children will now see that when this occurred, look what happened. It's not going to change anything. In the same way that when we look at sanctions, I think sanctions are important. We have to do every possible sanction we can think of, including SWIFT, including whatever we can, because we have to. But the catch there is that A, this is what Putin wants, and B, it's not going to stop him. Because it's not going to stop a military invasion. If you have a neighbor who's trying to set their somebody else's house on fire, if you're going to cut up their credit card, it's not going to stop them at this moment. But at the same time, what is this going to lead to? It's going to lead to Putin being more entrenched in power, the same way like North Korean guy is. And then that means that he's going to be more solid, which works for him.
Well, that's, I think, what some people have voiced their concerns about with only sanctions. And certainly the president has telegraphed the immediate response, which is going to be only sanctions and those type of things, no military action against this invasion of Ukraine. Does that embolden Putin right now to just say, well, then I'll just take Ukraine and I'll worry about the other stuff later? Or does that sort of send a message that says, now that the forces are all here, I guess they could change their mind? I mean, obviously, he lied to us in Ukraine when he said he wasn't planning an invasion. Maybe he thinks that we're doing the same thing.
Right. Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I think it's pretty much the definition of World War III is when Americans start shooting at Russians and vice versa.
Sure.
So because we have, both have nuclear weapons. So that's pretty much like, okay, so at what point do we start using our, what we have to protect ourselves and to accomplish our goals? So this is why I think it's wise on part of President Biden to say right off the bat, we're not going to put American troops in Ukraine because I guess he's against starting World War III, thank God. At the same time, he is absolutely willing to flood the country with our, fine American-made weapons and in a sense, turn Ukraine into Afghanistan in a sense that it's going to be now, what we're watching right now is almost like part one, which is swallowing the poison pill into this, Russian body, which is going to explode from the inside and potentially likely just destroy Russian state. Because to take on 40 million people who absolutely can't stand, Kremlin, Putin, and everything, because for the last 8 years, since 2014, it hasn't just been Russian propaganda that's been working, thank goodness, but there's also been a lot of national consciousness awareness in Ukrainians that they are their own identity because Putin forced them into this. This is what Secretary Blinken says over and over. If Putin wanted to, why is he doing the opposite of what he says he's trying to accomplish? He wants Russians, Ukrainians be friendlier. What is he doing? This is the opposite. He wants NATO to be further away. He's just approaching NATO himself.
True.
So he just continuously goes against what he says he wants. And the good thing is that Putin seems to be still afraid of NATO, which is very, very encouraging. And that gives a lot of hope to Baltic states, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, which are just terrified because what they're seeing and the Russian propaganda saying, let's keep marching on. This is where NATO plays a huge, important role. And it's just incredible that we have this, union of like countries, North Atlantic Treaty Alliance organization that is protecting us. It's amazing.
Yuri Rashkin on our Minuteman Press guest line. Yuri, one of the big discussion points, apparently, from the little diplomacy we were able to try and conduct with Putin, came up over Ukraine's current non-membership in NATO and the fact that Russia doesn't want them to become members of NATO. I must admit that from my paying attention in history class was not great. Why, when all that settled out in the breakup of the Soviet Union, why were some countries allowed into NATO and others not?
That is a good question, and I think that there were some geopolitics involved, and it takes all countries to agree to a country to join NATO. And Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia managed, to get all the stars lined up, and they were able to get in. Ukraine was not at the time. I think it was blocked by one of the countries. In addition, NATO just doesn't accept countries that are involved in fighting within their borders, and that's what Russia has been causing since 2014, is having this kind of a partial, incursion invasion where this separatist territories. I don't want to go too deep into it because it just gets confusing, but we know how quickly Russia absorbed and moved past them with their tanks in the last 24 to 48 hours, which just highlights, they're really irrelevant. But that fighting was another reason that Ukraine couldn't join NATO since at least 2014. So it's not like Ukraine was marching into NATO. And even Soviet propaganda confirmed that all of this talk was just a pretense to set up what they really wanted to do, was just to take out Ukrainian government. Putin does this thing where first he tries to buy politicians because he believes he can buy anything and everyone, and that's good KGB training. And then what he figured out is that you can buy all the politicians, but you still don't get the result that you want sometimes. It's ridiculous. Sometimes politicians are weak. Sometimes people rise up. It's terrible. So what do you have to do in the end? You use the troops. And this is where it's interesting to see our former president response to this, where he called Trump called Putin genius. And that's just like saying that Hitler is really good at being Hitler. Like, okay, this is a good thing since when? And I'm really it really warms my heart to see the bipartisan support for Ukraine because, Mitch McConnell said that Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. I'm just like, wow, Mitch McConnell, is he retiring? What's going on, But it's fantastic. It really just, because I always used to, the soft spot that I always held in my heart for Republicans was their strong anti-Soviet sentiment, which I absolutely 100% agree with. So this has always been we've always found common language with people right of center because I'm like, yes, Russia is a problem. Yes, we need strong military. You bet. I think the same way we need strong police force. We need strong military. It's just common sense. It has to be accountable, but we need it. And right now to see this kind of a division in the Republican Party is a little troubling, frankly.
Well, you wonder where some people are coming from here. I think I would like to talk to people that would say go Russia right now, because I don't understand how anybody could have that state of mind. But apparently there are some people out there. But assuming that I
will tell you. Tim, I think that actually it's a very good point, because how can people do this? And it's a very clear separation. It's about values. If you talk to people and people are saying there's the right thing to do and there's the wrong thing to do, I try to do the right thing. That is not the Russian approach as we see today, because Russian ethic is strength. If I have strength, then I do what I want. And people who respect that mindset are saying, this is great. This is exactly what I've been saying. So we just have to be aware. This is how we view the world, and therefore we respond to it appropriately.
All right. Well, I guess that makes sense. That point is made in Hollywood on occasion like that, where the villain is the person that just wants all the power. And yes, they get stuff accomplished because everybody's afraid of them. But eventually, in most cases, that ends up falling on his face. Yes. And we certainly hope it falls on his face.
Superheroes now.
Yeah. Certainly hope it falls on his face over there. Before I let you go, give us what you think. Based on what you know, you're obviously observing this. You lived life in Russia for a while, and you've been watching certainly since then. You still, I'm assuming, have family and friends over there.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's your best take on what we should expect here as the United States over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think over the next couple of weeks, what we have, from a Russian perspective, again, from Putin's, his plan is to get things wrapped up within about 10 days if possible. He's not set up for a long war. He's not interested in a long war. He, again, was emboldened by what happened in Crimea, where he had just, unmarked military, and that was almost enough because Ukraine was so much weaker then. At the same time, from, I think, American point of view, we are very much affected by what we saw in Afghanistan. And I think that we are nervous that we can put all the good things in a country, and then the government that we thought we were supporting collapses, and it just melts away, and all our efforts are for naught in some way. I mean, historically, we made a difference,
sure,
and on and on. But at the moment, it doesn't look really good, even though we evacuated 120,000 people, all of that. But still, this is where Mitch McConnell again says that Putin saw that we were weak and so on. Yes, of course. I mean, former President Trump negotiated a terrible treaty about exit from Afghanistan. President Biden tried to do what he could, but here we have the results. And yeah, it didn't look really good, no question about it. But Ukrainians are not Afghans. And I'm not saying this is in any disrespect to Afghan people who are amazing and they put up with incredible amount, and I would not wish that upon anyone. But Ukrainians they've seen the light. They've seen the light of freedom and democracy. And even though their politics and their government and there's plenty of corruption and so on, they still have freedom of the press. They were still able to talk about things. And they know that if they have puppet government, if they have Russia controlling them, there will be no freedom. This will be a territory of fear and exploitation, because that's what Russia brings. And so I think it's a very big concern for all of us, because emboldened Putin is going to march on. It's just what he's done. So when things are working well, why wouldn't you do the same thing again? And I think from Ukrainian perspective, they need help. They feel like they're fighting. They're talking about Molotov cocktails in Kiev to fight against invaders. This could be a house-to-house kind of a battle. But people are taking this very seriously, personally, and they're very patriotic. And I'm very just impressed and proud of people in Ukraine.
All right. Well, it's some great perspective, Yuri. We appreciate you joining us. I'll probably catch up with you here. We'll probably have you back to offer some commentary on it. I would love to be up on every single subject.
I'm in a unique situation, and I do have actually a YouTube channel with like 25,000 subscribers, most of whom are in Russia and Ukraine, believe it or not, because I like to talk about democracy. And so you have to find a place for that. But I am really glad. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, Tim. And really anybody that wants to kind of hear me speak about this, please reach out. I'm glad to provide some clarity, because Ukraine does not have like a powerful lobby, and this is a super important issue, and I'm glad to speak on it. So thank you so much.
Well, terrific. Thank you as well. Have a good weekend, Yuri, and we'll catch up again soon, I am sure. Yuri Rashkin on the Minuteman Press Guest Line here on your talk show. Interesting perspectives, good perspectives. That's, when people want to, I always find that interesting when we have outsiders come in and want to take over anything. It's like, do you really know what Janesville's about, what Wisconsin's about? And so we got a lot of commentators out there in the big media world, and they bring in all these people, but none of them, or I shouldn't say none of them, but a lot of them never spent any time there, don't understand the philosophy of what the country was all about and how it's all structured. I like that perspective. So appreciate your time this morning.